You might not smoke, drink alcohol, or ever touch drugs, but you could still be addicted to something that quietly damages your brain, your liver, and your heart every single day. That something is sugar. This sweet white powder doesn't just make you crave more food, it rewires the dopamine system in your brain, leaving you tired, moody, foggy, and often depressed without knowing why. Have you ever felt snacky even after a full meal? Do you find yourself needing just a little something sweet to stay awake or feel better? That's not just a habit, that's a sign of sugar addiction. Unlike drugs or alcohol, sugar doesn't wreck your life in a single moment, but it leads to fatty liver, blood sugar spikes, and increases your risk of type 2 diabetes, stroke, and even Alzheimer's, all without warning signs. Even worse, 73% of the foods in American grocery stores contain hidden added sugars. So, even when you think you're eating clean, you may still be trapped in the sugar cycle without realizing it. In today's video, we're going to uncover why sugar is just as addictive as hard drugs in the brain, why 5-year-olds are now developing liver disease once only seen in alcoholics, and how you can break free from sugar dependence with a simple, science-backed plan that doesn't involve extremes. Many people think sugar is just a matter of personal taste and preference. It couldn't possibly be as addictive as alcohol or drugs, right? But according to the medical definition updated in 2013, a substance is considered addictive if it meets 2 criteria. One is increasing tolerance. The other is psychological dependence. Tolerance means you need more and more of it to feel the same level of pleasure, because your brain begins reducing the number of dopamine receptors over time. Dependence means you can't stop thinking about it. You constantly seek it out in food, and you feel irritable or off when you don't get your fix. Sugar may not cause dramatic withdrawal symptoms like shaking, sweating, or nausea, but it quietly creates dependence, and that's what makes it even more dangerous. Like gambling or caffeine, sugar stimulates the brain's reward center. And when that system is overstimulated for too long, the brain pulls back to protect itself. As a result, you need more and more sugar just to feel normal. That's how the addiction cycle begins, not with chaos, but with quiet and persistent craving. When people think of sugar, they usually picture the white crystals they stir into their coffee or sprinkle on desserts. But the real threat hiding in your food isn't glucose. It's a different kind of sugar called fructose, and most people have never heard how damaging it really is. Table sugar, also known as sucrose, is made of 2 molecules, 1 glucose and 1 fructose, chemically bonded together. Glucose is the basic fuel that every cell on Earth can use for energy. And if your body runs low, it can actually make glucose from protein or fat. Fructose, however, is completely different. The human body has no biological need for dietary fructose, and no essential chemical reaction depends on it. Despite this, fructose has a very high sweetness index, and it's the part of sugar that triggers the brain's dopamine system, making it far more addictive than glucose. In small amounts, fructose might not seem harmful, but in the modern diet, it shows up in large quantities through sodas, breakfast cereals, cookies, and sauces. And because it hides under hundreds of different names on food labels, you might be consuming high levels of fructose every single day without realizing it. If you think only adults who drink alcohol can develop fatty liver disease or type 2 diabetes, you might be shocked to learn that these same conditions are now being diagnosed in 5-year-old children who have never touched a drop of alcohol. The reason is that fructose and alcohol are metabolized almost identically by the liver. Both substances must be processed directly in the liver, and when consumed in excess, the liver converts the surplus into fat. With alcohol, fermentation happens through yeast. With fructose, your own body performs that process inside the liver. And the result is the same: a buildup of visceral fat, especially in the liver itself. That's why, More and more children in the U.S. are being diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition once seen only in adult alcoholics. It doesn't stop there. When the liver becomes overloaded from constantly processing fructose, the body's overall metabolic function starts to break down, leading to insulin resistance, elevated blood fats, and even cognitive issues. The tragic part is that these kids aren't overeating in the traditional sense. They're just consuming foods that seem harmless: fruit juice, flavored yogurt, sugary cereals, and snacks marketed as healthy. We've replaced alcohol with something more accessible, more affordable, and more socially accepted. But it's causing nearly the same level of damage. That something is sugar. Have you ever wondered why the harder you try to cut back on sugar, the more intense your cravings become? Or why one small cookie can spiral into a full day of snacking and loss of control? The answer lies in how sugar affects the brain's dopamine system and how your body responds to overstimulation as a way to protect itself. When you eat sugar, dopamine levels spike and trigger a feeling of immediate pleasure. But if that happens too often, your brain starts reducing the number of dopamine receptors to avoid being overwhelmed. As a result, you need more sugar just to feel the same amount of satisfaction. That is the beginning of the addiction cycle, both physically and emotionally. Research shows that people addicted to sugar are more likely to switch to other addictive behaviors once they try to quit. This is called addiction transfer and includes things like alcohol, smoking, or gambling. It explains why many people gain weight after quitting cigarettes, or why some patients who undergo weight loss surgery later struggle with alcohol abuse. There are even public cases of celebrities going through this exact experience. When one addiction ends, another often takes its place because the brain's reward system has not fully recovered. Sugar is not just a food. For many people, it becomes a coping tool, a stress reliever, or even a comfort during emotional lows. And that is exactly what makes quitting sugar so much harder than it seems. Quitting sugar sounds simple in theory. Just stop eating sweets and cut out the obvious treats. But if it were that easy, millions of people wouldn't be stuck in the same cycle year after year. The truth is that quitting sugar is also a neurological recovery process. After years of overstimulation, your brain's dopamine system is depleted in both neurotransmitters and receptor function. When you suddenly stop eating sugar, your dopamine levels drop while your receptors are still suppressed. That combination leaves you feeling physically and emotionally drained in the early days. Some call this the sugar withdrawal syndrome, which includes fatigue, irritability, poor sleep, low mood, and a strange sense of emptiness you can't quite explain. According to neuroscience studies, it takes about 3 weeks for your brain to rebuild enough dopamine receptors so you can start feeling good again without needing a sugar fix. That is why people who want lasting results often turn to dopamine detox routines. These involve cutting back not just on sugar, but also on screen time, fast food, and caffeine to give the brain a full reset. Of course, you don't need to lock yourself in a room and read books for 3 weeks, but what truly matters is having a clear plan and a controlled environment to help you stay on track. Since nearly 75% of packaged foods contain hidden sugar, even one slip can send you back into the cycle in just a few days without you realizing it. Start by reading food labels carefully. Avoid ingredients you can't recognize or pronounce, and whenever possible, cook at home using whole, fresh ingredients that support your health and not your cravings. One of the most common misconceptions when trying to cut back on sugar is the belief that all fruit is bad simply because it contains fructose. The truth is that fruit is not the enemy. The real issue lies in how we process and consume fruit in the modern diet. When you eat whole fruit, you're not just consuming natural sugars. You're also getting both soluble and insoluble fiber, which work together to form a gel-like barrier inside your intestines. This gel acts as a natural filter. It slows down the absorption of fructose and glucose and sends satiety signals to your brain more effectively, so you feel full sooner and eat less overall. Because of this built-in fiber mechanism, it's actually hard to overeat whole fruit. Try eating 4 oranges in a row, and you'll quickly feel full and stop without effort. But when you squeeze those oranges into juice, you've removed the fiber and unleashed all the sugar into your bloodstream in just minutes, creating a rapid and damaging spike that overwhelms your liver. Fruit smoothies are not much better. Once the fruit is blended, the insoluble fiber is shredded beyond recognition and can no longer form the mesh-like structure needed to block sugar absorption. So, if you truly want to enjoy the health benefits of fruit without the metabolic downside, eat it whole. Avoid juicing, avoid fruit in cans or packages, and skip the blender when possible. Simple changes like this go a long way. If you've ever stood in the middle of a grocery store feeling overwhelmed by endless shelves of packaged foods, you're not alone. In today's world, buying groceries is a battle against marketing tactics and hidden sugars. To make this easier, nutrition scientists developed a classification system called NOVA, which divides foods into 4 groups based on how processed they are. NOVA Group 1 includes whole foods like fresh vegetables, fruits, fish, or brown rice. Groups 2 and 3 are lightly processed items that may be milled, cooked, or preserved without major alteration. But NOVA Group 4 is where the real trouble lies. This category includes ultra-processed foods full of additives, artificial flavors, and especially hidden added sugars. Large-scale studies show that only foods in the NOVA Group 4 are directly linked to metabolic disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and even depression. So instead of trying to memorize hundreds of different sugar names, stick to a simpler rule. Choose foods with ingredients you can recognize and pronounce, and stay away from products with long, unfamiliar ingredient lists. Your body will thank you for that choice, not just today, but for years to come. Sugar addiction is not a failure of willpower. It is the result of a food system designed to keep you hooked and leave your health paying the price. But you are not powerless. When you understand how dopamine works, why fructose is dangerous, how fiber protects you, and how to use the NOVA system to make better choices, you now hold the map to break free from this sweet but destructive cycle. You do not have to be perfect on day 1. Simply replacing one ultra-processed item each week with a whole food and staying consistent can completely shift your long-term health. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and share it with someone you care about who may be struggling with weight gain, high blood pressure, or constant fatigue that they cannot explain. And do not forget to subscribe so you never miss simple, science-based health content designed to help you take back control of your body and your future.